Distinguished delegates, it is an honor to meet you. I am Nam In-soon, a member of the Korean National Assembly and the chair of the meeting of women parliamentarians. I express my highest consideration to you for your commitment to the development and prosperity of the Asia-Pacific region, and thank you for joining us today. It is regretful that we cannot meet in person since the annual meeting had to be changed to a virtual meeting due to the spread of the Omicron variant. But nevertheless, I appreciate the opportunity to see your faces on the screen and exchange views virtually. The meeting of women parliamentarians is a venue for us to seek a gender-sensitive response in the post-COVID-19 era and discuss ways to achieve gender equality by increasing women participation and representation. I would like to invite delegates to take the floor for up to 7 minutes according to the order of speakers. Please adhere to the 7-minute limit for the smooth operation of the meeting. As for the order of speakers, it will be based on the order of pre-registration for interventions on the APPF website, provided that parliamentary speakers and heads of delegations will have the chance to speak first. The Korean delegation will be the first to take the floor on all agenda items that were proposed by the Korean National Assembly in the form of a keynote speech for each session. Then without further ado, let us begin the meeting of women parliamentarians. First of all, Honorable Yang Geum-hee of the Republic of Korea, please take the floor. Distinguished delegates, it is a great pleasure to meet you. I am Yang Geum-hee, member of the delegation of the Korean National Assembly. It has been 2 years since COVID-19 hit the world. The last 2 years were particularly difficult on women. With the fallout of the pandemic being largely concentrated on women, gender inequality has intensified and is even developing in new ways. As a result of the disappearance of jobs in face-to-face contact-based services such as accommodation, food, education, and care, in which a majority of workers are women, more women than men have experienced unemployment. Some women have had no choice but to leave their jobs as childcare facilities, schools, and elderly care facilities closed down, leaving them with the burden of domestic care. Women, who account for 70% of the global health workforce, are at risk of infection as they work at the forefront in the response against the coronavirus pandemic, and women living with violent partners at home have been further isolated under lockdown measures to prevent the spread of the virus. Distinguished delegates, in order to overcome the crisis in gender inequality that has emerged from COVID-19, we need to adopt a clear gender perspective in the establishment and implementation of policy. According to the United Nations Development Program, only 20% of policies out of all social and labor market policies implemented around the world to counter COVID-19 aim to resolve the care issue and secure economic stability for women. In other words, only 20% were gender responsive. Of the financial economic policies that supported businesses to withstand the COVID-19 emergency, only 14% aim to support areas with a majority of female workers. UNDP data also indicate that men are the majority of workers in 83% of task force teams on COVID-19 around the world, but only 11% of TF teams have achieved gender balance, and a mere 7% are teams where women are the majority. This is a case that shows the gender perspective was not sufficiently reflected in policies for COVID-19 response due to the underrepresentation of women. Distinguished delegates, there are analyses that underline women leaders performed much better in responding to COVID-19. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin, Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen, former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Commissioner Jung Eun-kyung are key examples. Why is it that we can't see more female leaders more often? This is because the number of female leaders in decision-making positions is limited. As of 2020, only 6% of countries have women as heads of government. Even in the parliament, which represents the will of the people, only 25% of members are women, and the proportion of women speakers is only 20%. This is why it is relevant for us to pay attention to policies in OECD countries aimed at strengthening women's representation. France and Belgium legislated to include 50% of women and men on the party's candidate list. And Germany's Green Party introduced and implemented a female and male co-chairperson system. Denmark and Norway have enacted legislation requiring at least 40% of female directors on boards of private companies. These policy cases will grant both women and men equal opportunity to speak in the decision-making process, thereby contributing to the establishment of gender-sensitive policies and their dissemination to the private sector. It is my hope that these policies will also be introduced in APPF member countries, leading to a more gender-equal society. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Next, Honorable Nik Hafemi Abdul Hadi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good afternoon. The Honorable Chairperson, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Brunei Darussalam welcomes and fully supports the two resolutions proposed for the APPF Women Parliamentarians Forum, and we firmly believe that the two resolutions are equally important aspects in our efforts to achieve gender equality. On the first resolution, on promoting gender-sensitive COVID-19 response and post-pandemic recovery, Brunei Darussalam highly values the key role of women in working shoulder to shoulder, sacrificing time and contributing their resources to the nation and the community during the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. We strongly support of our delegate as well in her initial remarks, and we continue supporting and commitment, and the continued support and commitment towards women is crucial in the post-COVID-19 era to help ensure the well-being of families and communities, achieve national economic progress, and promote greater social development towards national prosperity. The government of Brunei Darussalam has introduced measures focused on preserving the welfare and well-being of the public to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the socio-economic livelihoods of the people in the country. Such measures are providing work from home and more flexible time arrangements, and have certainly contributed towards sustaining work-life balance, not only for women, but for all who need it in our current COVID situation. Safety and well-being of women who are pregnant and breastfeeding mothers have become our utmost priority, and thus we encourage this section of women to receive vaccinations to protect themselves and their unborn children. Brunei Darussalam will remain steadfast to the challenges ahead in promoting and protecting the rights of women, and will continue to provide equal opportunities and access for women to enhance their skills. Honorable Chairperson, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Equally in respect for the second resolution on achieving gender equality by increasing women's participation and representation, Brunei Darussalam fully recognizes the importance of women's role in the socio-economic development of the country. Brunei Darussalam also noted that gender equality and women's empowerment, besides being basic human rights, are an important ends in themselves and crucial for the advancement of women. Gender parity is well ingrained in our country, whereby there is equal access of both genders in education, career pathways, in all industries and positions. And today, the number of women in Brunei have attained higher positions in various professional fields, including medicine, law, education, business, and engineering, with our 3 women parliamentarians elected in 2017, based on their merit and outstanding achievement and contributions to the society and the country. With women making up almost half of Brunei's population, our contribution to the national development is of great significance. According to the 2021 Global Gender Gap Reports by the World Economic Forum, Brunei is ranked 51 out of 156 countries in terms of economic participation and opportunity, whereas in East Asia and the Pacific region specifically, Brunei is ranked 10 out of 20 countries, which is admirable given the adoption of a resolution on promoting women's economic empowerment in the future of work and post-pandemic recovery through digital and financial inclusion during the recent 42nd ASEAN Interparliamentary Assembly presided by the Legislative Council of Brunei in August this year. On that note, Brunei Darussalam remains committed to achieving gender equality within our current institutions and prepared for a full cooperation to increase women's participation and representation within our community and the global community. Kamsahamnida. Thank you very much, Stefan.
Thank you very much for your words. Next, Honorable Piatat Wantalam of Thailand. You have the floor, Madam.
Chairperson, distinguished parliamentarians, on behalf of the Thai National Assembly, it is a great honor for me to have this opportunity to share views about gender equality and increasing women's participation and representation. Since 1997, Thailand has prescribed gender equality in our Constitution of the Kingdom of Thailand, in which this also aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals number 5, set up by United Nations in 2015. In Section 27 under the current Constitution, it prescribes that all persons are equal and shall have rights and liberties and be protected equally under the law. Men and women should enjoy equal rights. Discrimination against a person on the ground of differences in origin, gender, economic and social standing, religious belief, education, or political view shall not be permitted or allowed by law. Constitution is the supreme law of the country. If there is any law or provision that carries conflicts with the Constitution, such law or provision will not be effective. For this reason, Thailand does not concede such law that contradicts the principle of gender equality. The provision prescribed in the Constitution of the Kingdom of Thailand virtually endorses the gender equality in the clearest and most abstract approach. In reality today, Thai women have earned recognition and seated in the key leadership roles, driving the conglomerates to a high success level both in private and government sector, such as female President of the Supreme Court, female provincial governors, growing numbers of female senators or House representatives or political parties, and in other governance settings. I would like to emphasize that Thai women play more prominent roles in the society today, especially in the public charity area. There are quite a few institutions founded to endorse the significant roles of women. For instance, the National Council of Women of Thailand under the royal patronage of Her Majesty the Queen, the Women Lawyers Association of Thailand, and a number of public charity foundations. Furthermore, Thai government has allocated Thai Women Empowerment Funds with the strategic objectives to elevate and enhance women's capabilities and potentials in all dimensions. By bringing such capabilities, potentials, and possible variances between genders that have not yet been systematically developed to generate creative benefits, as well as to develop and expand the potentials of women's roles, so as to become strong social forces leading society to equality. This fund is a timely resource for developing women to drive a strong economic foundation and a better quality of life to all. The above-mentioned facts justifies that Thailand has appreciated the gender equality and the trend has been rising steadily. Nevertheless, we cannot discard the fact that there are a reasonable amount of people who still sense and are treated unequally between men and women. If considering the aforementioned information, such individual feeling or treatment of inequality is influenced by individual belief or social acceptance, not that the provision of the law being unclear. Although this is an individual feeling and experience, it is still the problem to be addressed and attended so as to achieve true meaning and sustainable equality. Chairperson, distinguished parliamentarians, before the closure, I'd like to highlight that women's capabilities and potentials are the great social forces. The collaboration and cooperation from all parties are very significant in providing the opportunities for women to adjust themselves so as to earn trust and recognition in their societies. In equivalent, women also need to continue developing their potentials as well as pursue the opportunities to generate more contributions into the community and society as a whole. As a result, this will lead to equality between men and women in all extents and in the most concrete direction. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
네, 의원님 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
다음으로는
Next,
스텔라 루즈
Honorable Stella Luz Kimbo from Philippines. The floor is yours.
Greetings to the President of the APPF, Honorable Tony Smith, to the Chairman of the 29th APPF Annual Meeting and Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea, Honorable Park Byung-seug, to the Chairperson of the APPF Women Parliamentarians Meeting, Honorable Nam In-soon, and to all our fellow women parliamentarians from across the region. Knowing fully well that the extant pandemic disproportionately affects women, we are committed to pursue ways and means to refurbish our successes in boosting women's rights deeply in the government's response system to address current and future public health emergencies, public health threats, disasters, and other health events of public concern. To this end, we are determined to A, stamp out intersectional discrimination, vulnerability, and marginalization of women. B, carry out gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. And C, sustain support for the utmost successful and fast-tracked implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. We thus humbly offer 12 gender-sensitive crisis response approaches, such as: first, strategic placement of women and the most vulnerable among them at the front and center of leadership, decision-making, and policy-making positions at all levels of the response and recovery systems. Second, continuance of availability and accessibility of survivor-centered gender-based violence and violence against women and girl children services, especially temporary shelters, psychosocial services, and legal aid, including specific GBV services to women staying in any detention, quarantine, or isolation facilities where prolonged stay is required or necessary. Third, utilization of a multisectoral, interdisciplinary, all of government and all of society approach, as well as state and non-state collaborations. Fourth, establishment of information and communications technology systems for education and information dissemination on pandemic and emergency risks and access to social protection, safety nets, referral systems, protection measures, and other appropriate measures in cases of GBV, which shall include traditional modes of communication to reach women living in remote areas or areas with limited access, such as newspaper, pamphlets, and radio. Fifth, furtherance of effective and meaningful global partnership and reinforcement of existing international cooperation. Sixth, prioritization of specific health needs of all women and girls at the community level, inside and outside the country, particularly access to sexual and reproductive health services. Seventh, integration of gendered approach in the legal, policy, and program implementation of vaccinations. Eighth, establishment of targeted social safety net programs for the most vulnerable and economically marginalized sectors of women. Ninth, institutionalization of safety and security measures for all displaced migrants or individuals and at-risk individuals and groups. 10th, development of mechanisms and procedures to address the difficulties faced by women in the employment sector during crisis, such as job loss, business closure, and debt incurred by repatriated migrants. 11th, augmentation of entrepreneurship and adequate livelihood opportunities and skills development for all women. And 12th, systematization of a national preparedness and response program to address the gender differentiated needs of women during public health emergencies, public health threats, disasters, and other health events of public concern. With regard to achieving gender equality by increasing women's participation and representation, we simply recommend 4 approaches as follows. First, issuance of a legal mandate for political parties to craft and implement a clear women and gender and development agenda and program consistent with their party philosophy and ideals. This agenda shall form part of the requirements for the accreditation of political parties. Second, integration of women and the leadership of a political party and its internal policy-making structure within the gender quota representation, wherein the percentage of either females or males in a political party shall not be less than 40%, nor more than 60% of the leadership and internal policy-making structures of the political party. Third, nomination of women as official candidates of the political party to elective positions in the government within the gender quota representation, wherein the percentage of either females or males shall not be less than 40%, nor more than 60% of those nominated as official candidates of the political party. And fourth, institutionalization of government incentives for registered, accredited political parties with women representation. In closing, on behalf of the 18th Congress of the Philippines, let me reaffirm our support and commitment to the Asia-Pacific Parliamentary Forum in its 29th annual meeting. Thank you and mabuhay.
네, 의원님 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your kind words. Next, Honorable Carrie Tan of Singapore, please take the floor.
안녕하세요, Chairperson Nam Yin-sun, and good afternoon to our distinguished colleagues. On behalf of the Singapore delegation, I would like to express our deep appreciation and gratitude to His Excellency Park Byeong-seok, Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea and the Chairperson of the Meeting of Women Parliamentarians, Madam Nam In Soon, for the thoughtful arrangements made for this meeting. I wish to express our Singapore delegation's pleasure to join all our fellow parliamentarians this session. Having fought the COVID-19 pandemic for 2 years, it is heartening to see that our collective will to uplift the lives and positions of women has not wavered. We are here meeting today with a common purpose: to exchange ideas on achieving gender equality by increasing women's participation and representation. This work cannot stop, and in fact needs to be doubled in effort, especially with the setbacks caused by COVID, on the home front as well as the work front for women. The Singapore delegation agrees with our fellow colleagues that women parliamentarians fulfill a very important role when they're in Parliament and when they participate in parliamentary debates. Our unique views and recommendations will help shape more gender equal laws and policies. I'm happy to share there are currently 29.8% of women members in the Singapore Parliament. It is almost 30% and compares well with the global average of 25.5%, according to surveys by the Inter-Parliamentary Union or IPU. In Singapore, we do not have a quota system to ensure gender diversity, but in the House, rather in every aspect of Singapore society, it is by an individual's merits that he or she is assessed. Thus, we have reached the almost 30% women representation in our Parliament over years of hard work across all segments of society. Throughout the years, we have made efforts to elevate the status, the education, and the position of women in society. And we take a lot of pride in this hard-won battle. We take pride also that together with other members of Parliament in Singapore, including our male parliamentarians, gender equality and achieving better outcomes for women have become and has always been a key focus in the policies, legislations, and motions that are discussed in the Parliament. Our Parliament has strongly signalled our commitment and desire to address issues and discrimination that women may still face in the workplace, at home, and in the education opportunities. For example, in 2017, we debated and also passed a motion entitled Aspirations of Singapore Women. At that time, the House affirmed the familial, social, and economic contributions of Singapore women, and also affirmed its support for women to fulfill both family and career aspirations, and for women to be future ready. Another example is in September this year, where we debated and we passed a motion to affirm that gender equality requires a whole of society effort to remove the barriers that women face in order to realize their full potential. In fact, in 2021, this year, the Singapore government declared the year of celebrating Singapore women. This is a recognition of women's contributions to the Singapore story, as well as to commemorate their progress and potential. We launched a series of discussions on women's issues entitled the Conversations on Singapore Women's Development. And since then, more than 160 conversations involving 5,700 participants from all walks of life in Singapore have shared their views. And the participants include not only women, but also men, old people, young people, homemakers, professionals, executives, social workers, students, and many more. The people provided many suggestions and feedback, which the Singapore government will incorporate into a government white paper that will articulate concrete action plans to further women's development in Singapore. We will be presenting this white paper in Parliament, and I'm looking very much forward to it. In connection to this effort, our government also announced in March this year a review of the sentencing framework for sexual and hurt offences against women. The message that we want to send is this: that the criminal justice system must reflect the values of society. And so, the criminal justice system must signal that any acts of hurt and sexual offence against women and minors are a gross violation of fundamental values in Singapore and must be penalised. As the Minister of Home Affairs said, offenders should expect to face the full force of the law. And this is our way to show our commitment to the protection of women. In truth, beyond these recent examples, Singapore has worked progressively over the years towards the betterment of women's position in all of society. Our approach is founded on the principle of meritocracy, where equal opportunities are available to both men and women, and all citizens, regardless of gender, enjoy equal access to fundamental resources such as education, healthcare, social protection, caregiving support, and employment. In the area of employment and career enhancement, women employees form an integral part of Singapore's workforce, about 50% of the resident workforce. This we are able to achieve together with the trend of higher educational attainment among females, and as more organizations embrace flexible work arrangements. Singapore's present focus is to empower women with more choices to meet their career aspirations while they meet their caregiving responsibilities. In this regard, we have a multi-pronged approach, and we're focused on three things: to encourage companies to offer flexible work arrangements in need to support the employees' caregiving duties at home, to help women to stay employable and future ready, and three, enhancing leave provisions to encourage greater shared parental responsibilities in the example of sharing the maternity and paternity leave between moms and dads. In the area of boardroom diversity, Singapore has set up a Diversity in Action Committee, or DAC, that receives staff and secretariat support from our Ministry of Social and Family Development. The committee's mission is to increase the representation of women on the boards of companies listed on the Singapore Exchange. In 2019, the committee's work was expanded to also include increasing women representation on the boards of organizations in the people and public sectors. In 2013, this committee found that women held only 8.3% of directorships on the boards of companies listed on SGX. A more recent survey done by investment research firm MSCI found that by the end of 2019, this percentage has more than doubled to 18.4%. And this certainly still needs improvements, and we will do more efforts in this area. Thus, in the private sector, as well as in the public sector, in civic organizations, as well as in parliament, women representation has increased over the years in Singapore. And this did not happen by chance. With deliberate effort, we must continue to work at it to persuade, to highlight, to voice out the concerns and contributions of women in order that the importance of women representation is reinforced time and again. As we pursue this goal, it is our hope that the partnership between men and women will deepen and grow, with respectful relations and equitable family roles as the cornerstone. As parliamentarians, we can steer this movement and make it a whole of society effort and nudge everyone to make efforts and enable the mindset change that we need in our culture, to play their part and involve everyone in empowering every woman at home and work, in society, in government, to freely realize her full potential and participation in society. Let us work together and support one another in this journey for the advancement of women, and ultimately, we will all benefit as a society. I'm sure we all find resonance with this observation, that women hold up half the sky. Thank you.
네, 의원님 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Next, Honorable Pitara Lao Hapongchana from Thailand. The floor is yours.
Chairperson, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Thai National Assembly, it is a great honor for me to have this opportunity to share views about gender-sensitive crisis response during and post the COVID-19 pandemic period. Over the past years, global and inter-community made an effort to mitigate women issues. More girls are going to school.
fewer girls are forced into early marriage. More women are serving in parliaments and positions of leadership, and laws are being reformed to advance gender equality. Women are playing a significant role in the development communities and nations. However, the effect of COVID-19 pandemic have reserved the progress on gender equality and women's rights. It indicates that women issues such as violence against women, discrimination, and unfair treatment persist. In the times crisis, including the outbreak of the COVID-19, women and girls are at the higher risk of intimate partner violence and other forms of domestic violence due to increased tensions in the household. According to the Sustainable Development Goals report in 2020, in some countries, domestic violence cases have increased by 30%. Women on the front lines in the fight against COVID-19 constitute 70% of the health and social workforce, and their family members have an increased risk of COVID-19 infection. While the systems that protect women and the vulnerable are weakened, and services to support them are being disrupted or inaccessible. For the above reason, specific measures should be implemented to protect women and girls from the risks of emotional and physical violence. With the changing dynamics of risks imposed by COVID-19. For example, the government should issue the directive to tackle all forms of gender-based violence to enhance gender equality and to protect women's rights during and post-pandemic period, and establish safe and flexible emergency warning systems, including new services to assist women in contacting the police directly. Chairperson, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in Thailand, cases of violence against women, girls, and family members during October 2019 to April 2020 due to physical violence are up to 87%. The domestic violence between 2016 and April 2020 is up to 1,400 cases per year, or 4 cases per day. Moreover, during COVID-19 pandemic period, domestic violence increased by 66% due to family income and drug problems. Apart from domestic violence, the COVID-19 affects women's income from layoffs or reducing women's work hours. To recover societies and the economy of women, the Thai government has launched measures to support women's welfare and aid, employment, skills training programs to boost participation of women in the workforce, and implementing one-year debt moratorium on Thai women empowerment funds. Over the last several years, APPF has emphasized gender equality by the meetings of women parliamentarians since the 24th APPF annual meeting. Nevertheless, the pandemic of coronavirus underpins problems which affect women's rights throughout their lives and inequality across the globe. This indicates that gender issues need stronger cooperation of the international community to stop it, especially during and after the coronavirus pandemic period, to fight violence against women and achieve the goal targets of SDG 5, gender equality. To achieve our goal, the Thai National Assembly is prompt to cooperate with APPF member countries, the United Nations, and the other regions to promote gender equality and rights of women to ensure a gender-sensitive crisis response after the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.
네, 의원님 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Next, Honorable Kang Rok of Cambodia. Can you please take the floor?
Thank you with respect, Madam Chair, Honorable Pak Lee Jong-sek, Chair of the 29 APPF and Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea. Honorable Member, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the National Assembly of the Kingdom of Cambodia, I would like to express my appreciation to the Honorable Chair for the opportunity to share our experience, progress, challenge, and future direction to achieve gender equality by increasing women participation and representation. This is rather a good opportunity to strengthen cooperation and trust between women and men. Parliamentarians represent the voice of voters, particularly the voice of women voters, and this is a forum to share experience that value women's participation for regional and global security, peace, and sustainable development. Honorable member, ladies and gentlemen, Cambodia has put gender equality at the forefront of development as a political commitment and carry out specific measures to promote women participation in politics at both the national and subnational level. As a member of the United Nations and signatory to many conventions and international instruments for women, Cambodia has adopted law, policy, and measures to achieve harmony in political leadership, especially by understanding the value of women's genuine participation in both family and social affairs. The Cambodia Parliament and government, with the Ministry of Women Affairs as its agent, cooperate with all stakeholders, including political parties, civil society, the private sector, and family, especially men, to integrate gender understanding under the slogan, "Helping women is helping oneself." We have seen various progress in women empowerment in education sector, health, and business. For women in business, Cambodia is ranked 25 out of 153 countries in terms of women entrepreneurs at 61%. The royal government of Cambodia has also succeeded in achieving women ratio in public service to 50%. In terms of administration, women participation is 1 out of 3 in village, 30% in commune and also youth, between 10-30% in district and province, as well as government ministry from the rank of Director General upward. 20.8% in the National Assembly and 74% in the Senate. To ensure that policy are effectively implemented, the Parliament and Ministry of Women Affairs are the aim actor in gender mainstreaming in all sectors. The aim is to change negative stereotypes to promote the status of women in Cambodia. Honorable member, ladies and gentlemen, under the framework of the Women Political Caucus and in my position as a woman political ambassador, Since before the pandemic, we have been working on a campaign called Girl to Leader. We believe it is crucial to build and strengthen leadership in girls at a young age to foster passion and thrive in their future endeavor. As a woman, I want young girls to know that they should dare to dream and work hard for dream to become more than dream. We have met almost 1,000 girls across the country to share experience, natural confidence, and offer guidance from prominent female political leaders. With this campaign, our parliament is fostering future female leaders with capacity, humility, and inspiration to reach the same goal. As parliamentarians, we fully support the government in promoting regional cooperation and partnership. We need to address common challenge to achieve new development, reinforce post-pandemic resilience for gender equality, and strengthen women empowerment in full participating to the same degree as men in decision-making and capacity building in all sectors. This is among the priorities to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal by 2030. Our efforts to booster international cooperation are indispensable. They require each of our legislative body to effectively play a role with a strong sense of responsibility in establishing legal framework and ratifying instruments that rely concrete action to support government policy for gender equality. Women and girls must be truly given the opportunity to be empowered. Thank you for your kind attention and wish you all stay safe and strong. Thank you.
네, 의원님 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
다음으로는
Next, Honorable Ina Sviatenko from Russian Federation. The floor is yours.
Доброе утро, дорогие коллеги, друзья. Я рада приветствовать вас и рада встрече с коллегами из Тихоокеанского региона. И считаю важным максимально использовать любую возможность для конструктивного диалога, в том числе и на полях такого авторитетного форума, как Азиатско-Тихоокеанский парламентский форум. Я особо рада представившейся возможности выступить на уже ставшей традиционной встрече женщин-парламентариев. Российская делегация представила на 29-ю сессию проект резолюции по гендерным вопросам, и мы удовлетворены, что его положения вошли в проект, в два совместных проекта резолюции 29-й сессии по темам определения способов обеспечения мер реагирования после пандемии COVID-19 с учетом гендерных факторов и достижения гендерного равенства посредством расширения участия и представления женщин, в котором мы выступаем соавторами со многими странами-участниками АППФ. В последние десятилетия в условиях нарастания технологических, экономических и демографических вызовов роль женщин в современном мире постоянно возрастает, и это признается на самом высоком уровне. Одной из глобальных целей устойчивого развития, принятых Генеральной Ассамблеей Организации Объединенных Наций в 2015 году, является обеспечение гендерного равенства и расширение прав и возможностей всех женщин. Россия на системной основе уделяет особое внимание поддержке женщин, созданию условий для их полного и равноправного участия в политической, экономической, социальной и культурной сферах жизни общества. И это не случайно. более половины жителей России – женщины. Они вносят исключительный вклад в развитие всех сфер общественной жизни. На их плечах держатся сферы образования, здравоохранения, социальной защиты, культуры. С 2017 года Россия реализует национальную стратегию действий в интересах женщин. А во всех регионах страны приняты региональные планы по реализации национальной стратегии.
러시아 의원님, 네, 의원님
Excuse
지금 의원님 말씀하시는 부분이 영어 통역이 지금
We are not getting the interpretation of your speech. So I think I'm afraid I have to stop you from giving further speech because there's no interpretation into English. So why don't we put your order, speaking order, to the last of the list? Would it be alright because there is no English interpretation? So after we fix this problem, I'd like to invite once again our honorable Russian delegate to give a speech. I ask for your kind understanding in this regard. So next, I'd like to invite Honorable Arzeti Bilbina from Indonesia for your remarks. I once again apologize for the mix-up, for the technical problem, and I will ask once again for your speech at the last of the order. Thank you.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Chair, Madam In Sunam, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is honor to share our view on the subject of discussion today on promoting gender-sensitive COVID-19 response and post-pandemic recovery. We believe that it's our duty as women parliamentarians to take action on ensuring all COVID-19 response and recovery decision-making address women need. Globally, women make up 70% of workers in health and social sector, and they do 3 times as much unpaid care work at home as men. Besides, women are also overrepresented in sector hit economically by the pandemic, such as hospitality, tourism, and labor, which indeed put them a greater risk of losing income both at the short and longer term. Thus, we need to seize the moment of crisis as the opportunity to foster the stronger inclusion of women perspective, experience, talent, and skill is responding to the crisis. To this end, Parliament can lead an example to ensure that any emergency response and recovery legislation, emergency and/or relief packets and budget are developed on the basis of sex disaggregated data, gender analysis, and consultation with gender experts, and it includes a gender impact assessment. In addition to that, it is critical for women parliamentarians to engage the male parliamentarians counterpart in being committed to a gender-sensitive response because we cannot achieve our goal alone. And collaboration between men and women is needed. Rising inequality are inevitable during COVID-19 pandemic as we are struggling with the health impact of the pandemic. We must not forget to continuously advocate for the improvement of economic inclusion of women and through equal pay, better job protection, equal distribution of care work, expand social protection for the caregiver, and other informal job involving women. Further, I am of the view that we need to strengthen our collaboration, cooperation, and coordination not only among APPF women members of Parliament, especially through information sharing and action of best practice on an effort to promote gender-sensitive COVID-19 response and pandemic recovery, but also with women organizations, civil society, business sector, academic, and other women activists in order to engage more women in the COVID-19 responses and pandemic recovery. Only then will women and girls be able to change their life, and in doing so, make an even greater contribution to the region prosperity. Thank you.
네, 의원님 말씀
Thank you very much. Next, Honorable Yuki Waseda from Japan. The floor is yours.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am Waseda Yuki, the member of the Japanese delegation and the member of the House of Representatives. The reason why I decided to pursue my career in politics was that through my experience in community paper, I noticed that the voices of the weak were not reflected into politics and strongly felt the need to change such reality. Promotion of women's participation and gender equality have always been at the heart of my political activity. Unfortunately, as a result of the most recent lower house election in Japan, the ratio of women in the House of Representatives is 9.7%, which is slightly lower than before the election. The House of Representatives is ranked 168 out of 190 countries in female representation, which means that we need to advance our efforts further. Meanwhile, our party, the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, has recently finished its leadership election and has organized a structure consisting of 12 executive members with the same number of men and women. Our party intends to take the lead in women's participation and gender equality. As pointed out repeatedly, the COVID-19 has had a quite more serious impact on women. The impact appears in various forms, including human rights violations such as domestic violence and other forms of violence against women. The increase in the number of female suicides during COVID-19, the economic impact on non-regular workers and essential workers with a high proportion of women, and the increased burden on women raising children. As a Diet lawmaker belonging to the largest opposition party, I have made various policy proposals to extend the hand of assistance to socially vulnerable people, including women, children, and people with disability. I submitted various bills, including a bill to improve the wage of nursing care workers, a bill to improve working conditions of occupations with a higher percentage of women, including caregivers, childcare workers, and after-school care program instructors, and to pay special COVID allowances, and bills to provide emergency assistance to single-parent households and students suffering due to COVID. In fact, many of my proposals have been incorporated in the government policies. While the COVID-19 infection situation seems to be calming down recently in Japan, the problem which existed before the pandemic was further highlighted during COVID. In any case, I hope you all agree that the promotion of women's empowerment remains to be our top priority. I look forward to advancing the effort while sharing knowledge among fellow parliamentarians in the Asia-Pacific region. Promoting women's participation is an indispensable prerequisite for promoting gender mainstreaming in any policy area. As I started earlier, our country currently has a major issue in women's participation, particularly in the political field. Meanwhile, in the field of international cooperation, Japan formulated the second edition of National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security. As for our international cooperation effort in disaster-stricken area, Japan recognizes the importance of promoting disaster risk prevention and emergency response, as well as recovery and reconstruction with a gender perspective based on the experience in domestic disaster response. Japan is also promoting efforts to share its methodology to the rest of the world. In the Special Committee on Disaster in the House of Representatives, I have been stressing the need to incorporate women's perspective in the disaster-related measures, as well as the importance of inclusive disaster risk reduction, considering the principle of leaving no one behind. In the National Diet, I will continue to call for inclusion of women's perspective in deliberation process of all policies, including COVID measures, and encourage various people concerning to strongly advance our effort in the field of international cooperation. As stated at the beginning, the voices of the vulnerable minorities could easily be ignored if everything is left as is. We, as parliamentarians, must represent the voice of all vulnerable people, including women and girls, extensively in the legislative body to ensure that the situation does not get overlooked in national politics. It is my greatest joy to have the opportunity to meet and exchange views with the parliamentarians sharing the same aspiration in the virtual format. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your words. Next, Honorable Cora Cecilia Pinedo Alonso of Mexico. You may take the floor. She will speak in Spanish, but there will be English subtitles. So please keep that in mind.
Respetables legisladoras y legisladores del Foro Parlamentario de Asia-Pacífico. A nombre de México, me permito presentar ante ustedes este proyecto de resolución que tiene el objetivo de promover la igualdad de género mediante el aumento de la participación y la representación de la mujer, elementos indispensables para alcanzar el empoderamiento de este importante grupo poblacional. La inclusión de las mujeres en los espacios públicos de toma de decisiones ha representado un largo camino azaroso que solo ha podido darse por medio de la lucha incansable de mujeres y hombres sensibles. Con el objetivo de hacer el mundo un espacio que refleje con fidelidad la composición paritaria de su población, de acuerdo con la Organización de las Naciones Unidas, solo 26 mujeres ocupan cargos de jefas de Estado y o gobierno en 24 países que a la velocidad actual la igualdad de género en los puestos más altos de poder se alcanzará hasta dentro de 130 años. Por otro lado, en el ámbito legislativo, en 1995 el 11% de los parlamentarios nacionales eran mujeres y hoy en día esta cifra ha alcanzado un 25%. Además de que solo 4 países tienen un 50% de mujeres en la composición de sus parlamentos unicamerales y bicamerales. Asimismo, solo 19 países han alcanzado o superado el umbral del 40% de su composición, incluidos 9 de Europa, 5 de América y 4 de África y 1 del Pacífico. Cifras que ponen en evidencia que a esta velocidad de progreso, la paridad de género en los órganos legislativos nacionales no se logrará antes del año 2063. En el caso específico de México, me es destacable señalar que por primera vez en la historia del Honorable Congreso de la Unión, nuestro país, su composición es efectivamente paritaria, es decir, el 50% de sus integrantes somos mujeres, lo que significa un avance mayúsculo para nuestra democracia representativa. Sin duda, aún enfrentamos grandes retos para lograr una plenitud, el objetivo de una mayor participación y representación de la mujer, por lo que las y los legisladores debemos trabajar arduamente para materializarlo, incrementar acciones que permitan poner fin a toda forma de discriminación y velar por la plena participación de las mujeres en igualdad de oportunidades en la toma de decisiones de la vida política, económica y pública del país. Además de garantizar nuestro acceso universal a la salud sexual y reproductiva. Por ello es imperativo y urgente que a través de este importante foro parlamentario incentivemos más llamados al inamovible propósito de alcanzar una auténtica igualdad sustantiva. Por lo anterior, el proyecto de resolución impulsado por la delegación mexicana tiene como fin, primero, exhortar a los Estados miembros del APPF a dar seguimiento y reforzar las acciones emprendidas para la consecución del Objetivo de Desarrollo Sostenible 5, lograr la igualdad entre los géneros y empoderar a todas las mujeres y las niñas. Y en particular a su meta 5.5, que tiene como finalidad garantizar la participación plena y efectiva de las mujeres y la igualdad de oportunidades de liderazgo a todos los niveles de toma de decisiones y en las esferas política, económica y pública. Segundo, urgir a los Estados miembros del APPF a establecer medidas políticas encaminadas a generar condiciones de igualdad de oportunidades para el ejercicio de liderazgo en cargos de alto nivel dentro del ámbito público para mujeres y hombres, así como para eliminar la violencia política de género. Tercero, invitar a los parlamentos de los Estados miembros del APPF a elaborar y aprobar legislación que asegure de manera eficaz la participación y representación equitativa de las mujeres y hombres en las instituciones legislativas, aunado a favorecer el papel de la mujer al frente de los órganos de gobierno y comisiones parlamentarias. Cuarto, llamar a los parlamentos de los Estados miembros del APPF a incrementar los presupuestos destinados a impulsar una mayor participación de las mujeres para el ejercicio de liderazgo en la política. Quinto, instar a los parlamentos de los Estados miembros del APPF a establecer acciones afirmativas como cuotas de género que permitan abrir espacios para la participación política de las mujeres en los órganos del Estado, especialmente en los poderes legislativos. Muchas gracias y reciban un fraterno saludo desde México.
Thank you very much. Next, Honorable Damdin Suren from Mongolia. The floor is yours.
네, 들리십니까? 네, 안녕하십니까?
들립니다.
네, 안녕하십니까? 인순남
Good afternoon, Honorable In Sun Nam. It is my great pleasure to meet you. It would be nice if I could give a Korean speech, but there are other delegates from the region, so I'd like to give a speech in English. It is my great pleasure to meet you all.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to express my sincere greetings to you all. Today we gathered here to discuss very important issues that our world is facing. I trust that today's meeting will play an important role for women legislators to discuss emerging responsibilities and opportunities dealing with the challenges of the 21st century, and to define our common goals and interests for peace and humanitarian cooperation as well. I would like to emphasize that our leadership will not only open up new roles and engagement features in social, political, economic processes, and itself matures as an ability to adapt, but also will have a significant impact on the post-pandemic world order. I would like to bring up 3 topics to discuss with you. Firstly, although women have made a huge contribution to reducing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the crisis has led to a setback in many of the values and advances that have been fulfilled in protecting women's rights and improving the quality of their lives. Racial disability, income, age, gender discrimination, as well as inequality and violence are on the rise. At such times, it is important for us parliamentarians to ensure economic security for women, reduce their non-remunerated working hours, take gender-sensitive measures, and create a legal environment that allows full use of their powerful resources. It is important to support the natural soft power mentality, encompasses independence, faithfulness, flexibility, openness, toughness, kindness, and ability to work with non-standardized attitudes and to provide them with fair competition conditions. Therefore, it is crucial to improve the management of international joint projects to promote women's participation and free competition in the economies of the APPF member countries. In particular, it is necessary to increase women's entrepreneurship in the digital economy and provide access to international value chains. I have been seeking opportunities to have active cooperation with micro-entrepreneurs from Buryatia region and Russian Federation and the Republic of Korea in order to improve business capacity of women in my province of Silingaimak. I lead the women's organization in Silingaimak and work very closely with women, including with the Greenhouse Project. As a result, there are more than 60 other projects are beginning to bear their profits in Silingaimak today. I will further work to create and expand a wide range of technological opportunities and know-hows. Secondly, during the COVID-19 pandemic, politics and social economic momentums have been mostly driven by science exclusively. Have we, however, understand the true essence of this science and correlate our work together? Also, science has revealed the nature of the problem. It doesn't show us that the solutions for problems of global warming, pandemic, public health, and many other issues cannot be solved by science alone. The hygiene and epidemiology specialists have played an important role in the policy development during the pandemic. Thus, we need to develop a trans-science environment in which we can communicate with scientists, understand and collaborate with each other, and work to create a legal background of decision-making mechanism with participation of scientists. I think this is an important lesson from pandemic. I would like to highlight that we live in a time that the science for knowledge and prosperity must transform into a science for the socio-economic benefit of post-pandemic. And laws should be adapted on the basis of analysis on the links between science and society. It is important for us to work together and make our voices heard. And thirdly, one of the key roles of Parliament, particularly women parliamentarians, in strengthening resilience in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic is to work together to make decisions that fully represent the diverse needs of women. I urge you to make joint efforts to develop policies that link the environmental, digital, and green economic opportunities based on women's various needs and their growing economic and feasible capacity. To this end, I want the APPF to lead in endeavors of prospering rural areas in developing countries, promoting and expanding women's entrepreneurship and innovativeness while supporting the scientists and volunteer movements. Thank you for all attention.
네, 몽골원님.
Thank you very much for your intervention. I was very surprised by your fluent Korean, so thank you. Next, Honorable Tu Haren of Vietnam, you may take the floor.
Excellency, Madam Chair, thank you for giving me this opportunity to address the meeting. I highly value the topic of the meeting to enhance the parliamentary role to promote gender equality, women's participations, and representations in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the past 2 years, gender equality goals has faced tremendous challenges due to the COVID-19. Women account for half of the world's populations. However, they have suffered more from inequality. This has been more acute during the COVID-19 pandemic. Women have suffered from job and income losses, and they also have to take care more of the families since the children study at home and family members affected by the COVID-19. Women plays important roles in front lines against coronavirus as well as in recovery. This is why it is urgent for us to raise the voice to encourage parliamentary actions to achieve gender equality, gender-sensitive, and gender-responsive approach in the post-pandemic recovery. Distinguished delegates, in the Agenda 2030, goal number 5 of gender equality and empowerment is both the target and part of the resolution to achieve other SDGs. Vietnam is among top countries in the region to have quite a comprehensive legal framework on gender equality through the constitutions, law on gender equality, other laws, and the national strategy of gender equality in different phases, renewing the National Action Plan for the Vietnamese women progress. Vietnam has participated in international commitments of gender equalities, including the CEDAW, Beijing Declarations, and Platform for Actions, the MDGs, and the SDGs. We have also joined many parliamentary meetings and initiatives in gender equalities and promoted gender mainstreaming, gender sensitive and responsive in all fields, political, economic, and social. These have contributed to the fast and sustainable development of women in many areas, valued by national and international community. There are more women in politics in Vietnam, and better jobs for women, better opportunities for equal access to all socio-economic services. We are delighted to see that APPF member economies continue to make notable strides towards achieving gender equality and advancing women's participation in the regional economy, particularly women's access to jobs, but inadequate policy, social control gender bias, which hold back further progress and full potential of women's contributions to the economy remains untapped. Furthermore, the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on women highlights existing gaps in our efforts to advance women's economic potential. Thus, we believe that APPF Putrajaya Vision 2040 envisages strong, balanced, secure, sustainable, and inclusive growth as a key economic driver towards achieving an open, dynamic, resilient, and peaceful Asia-Pacific community by 2040, with prosperity for all its people and future generations. The vision commits APEC leaders to pursuing quality growth that brings disclosure of economic potential, benefits, greater health, and well-being to all, including women. Although the meeting of women parliamentarians is young, but shows our high commitment to strive for gender equality and further parliamentary actions in these regards. Therefore, we highly appreciate the meeting's agenda items, and we are happy to co-sponsor the meeting resolution in support for our APPF efforts to promote gender equality. At this point, I would like to make some proposals as follows. First, further parliamentary actions focus on gender-responsive recovery policies and strategies, including advocating for, initiating, debating, and enacting law reform to support implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda and the implementation of the SDG 5 on gender equality and women girls empowerment. Second, review national budgets holistically as addressing the matter of gender equality. Women in peace and security in the post-COVID-19 recovery requires a cross-sector approach and overseeing the budget distributions. Third, enhance the representations and participations of women parliamentarians to promote women participations and leadership in parliamentary decision-making, gender-responsive legislations, oversight of government actions on the pandemic from the gender perspective. Fourth, strengthen parliamentary cooperations with the IPU, international organizations, and among APPF members to share experiences and lessons to promote gender equality, gender-sensitive, and gender-responsive approach in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and for the post-pandemic recovery. And finally, encourage to build up knowledge and a common understanding among parliamentarians from different countries about the impact of COVID-19 on the promotions of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. Thank you for your kind attention, and thanks again for giving me this opportunity to address at the meeting.
Thank you very much. Next, Honorable Himaul Alia from Indonesia was supposed to give the remarks, but Honorable Argentina, who gave the speech before, will give speech instead of her. So, Honorable Delegate from Indonesia, please take the floor.
Indonesia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Chair, Madam In Sunam, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The House of Representatives of the Republic of Indonesia is of the view that women participation and representation is a prerequisite to achieve gender equality and democracy. Encouraging women represented in elected bodies allow them to contribute to development and nation building as well as to ensure that government is participatory, responsive, equitable, inclusive, and lead to equal access to resources and to development result and outcome for all. Participation and representation would also allow women direct engagement in public decision making and is meant in ensuring women empowerment and accountability. Through representation, women's voice will be heard better and issue of their consent will be fairly recognized. This is because women in legislative tend to be more likely than men in addressing women's interests. In Indonesia, mainstreaming gender equality and gender responsive policy into national long and medium-term development plan in mandatory and regulatory presidential instruction the strengthened law on gender equality. In the implementation, it is complemented with a guideline for gender mainstreaming at local government and gender responsive budgeting. Indonesia also issue various laws and regulations to promote gender equality and empowerment of women. In terms of women participation and representation in politics, Indonesia has long passed law and the ratification on the Convention on the Political Rights of Women. This law regulates the realization of equality of position, the guarantee of equal right to vote and to be elected, the guarantee of participation in policy formulation, the opportunity to occupy bureaucratic position, and the guarantee of participation in socio-political organization. Indonesia also has law on general election, law on political party, and law on the general election with mandate 30% quota for women representation in parliament. In addition to meeting a minimum of 30% representation, currently the executive and legislative branch as well as all interests. Interested parties are working together in encouraging the improvement of the quality of women legislative members, so that women representation in parliament will have a more significant impact. This is because we believe that representation affects more than just policy. It is a tool for social empowerment. Thank you.
네, 의원님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. And we have the Russian delegate. If you are ready, do you have an English interpreter at your disposal? Can you please check? If you have an English interpreter with you, then we would like to go ahead and listen to your speech.
Добрый день, дорогие друзья, коллеги, слышно ли меня? Надеюсь, что сейчас все технические неполадки будут устранены и будет возможность у меня выступить перед столь высоким собранием.
러시아 의원님 죄송합니다. 아직 통역이 원활하지가 않습니다.
We can't hear the English interpretation. Can you please check if you have the English interpretation with you?
Hello, this is Secretary from South Korea. We would like to check simultaneous interpretation first.
Меня слышно?
So, Mr. Boris, could you speak any sentence in English channel?
Заработал у них синхронный перевод, надеюсь.
Yes, I can hear your voice. Then, dear Russian delegates, could you speak any sentences to check simultaneous interpretation?
Да, и снова доброе утро, дорогие друзья. Я искренне надеюсь на то, что у меня все-таки будет возможность выступить, и вы меня услышите.
Yes, I can hear your English interpretation very well, so we can move to our delegate's speech.
И я искренне... Отлично. Я рада встрече с коллегами из Азиатско-Тихоокеанского региона. И считаю важным максимально использовать любую возможность для конструктивного диалога, в том числе и на полях такого авторитетного форума. Особо рада представившейся возможности выступить на уже ставшей традиционной встрече женщин-парламентариев. Российская делегация представила на 29-ю сессию проект резолюции по гендерным вопросам. И мы удовлетворены, что в его положение вошли два совместных проекта резолюции 29-й сессии АППФ по темам определение способов обеспечения мер реагирования после пандемии COVID-19 с учетом гендерных факторов и достижение гендерного равенства посредством расширения участия и представленности женщин, в котором мы выступаем соавторами со многими участниками АППФ. В последние десятилетия в условиях нарастания технологических, экономических и демографических вызовов...
Excuse me, Mr. Boris.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry for the intercept, but we could hear the English interpretation with our system. So could you switch the interpretation system? We will assign your the accounts as interpreters, and then your interpretation will speak out mainly. Yes, I can hear you.
Мы ждем его?
Да, потому что ты хочешь сказать переводчику, что я сказала. Сейчас.
Hello, Mr. Boris.
네, 러시아 의원님 아직도 통역 시스템.
I'm afraid we still can't hear you because of the English interpretation. If it is okay, we would like to open the floor to comments from the other members. If you could check the system again, and once you are ready, please let us know so that we can give you the floor. So please let us know if the English interpretation is ready, and we will first move on to further comments from other members because there are applications for the floor. Does anyone want to take the floor? Yes, from Fiji. We have a request for the floor. Then from Fiji, Honorable Rotimimu and Kepa, please take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, fellow members of parliaments and participants. COVID-19 has had most impact on women, in particular for small island countries like Fiji, which depends heavily on tourism. Tourism contributes about 40% of Fiji's GDP. The Fijian economy was expected to contract by 15.7%. And for the current financial year, tax revenues were expected to be 43% lower than pre-COVID levels. Women are the majority of workers in the local tourism industries, in the hotel and broader hospitality sector. Most work in hotel housekeeping, reception, guest and other hotel services. They also dominate the informal sector, particularly those areas that benefit from the flow-on effects of the tourism industry, such as handicrafts. Many Fijian women are market or roadside vendors and are key participants in this informal and micro, small and medium enterprises. As many women are laid off from employment due to the economic impact of the pandemic, many are burdened with domestic work and additional responsibilities of care for their families. The lockdowns have seen more family members stay at home and thus increasing the daily domestic burden for women to care for their families. Many of these women have directly felt the loss of income and their livelihood as border closures devastated our tourism industry. However, there have been signs of hope, with many women who had lost their jobs going into small businesses like baking and selling homemade food. Our media in Fiji is filled with stories of resilience with young women who have lost their day jobs in the tourism and aviation sectors, become small home-based entrepreneurs. It is also important to note that women dominate the health sector. According to the Secretariat of the Pacific Community, Pacific women have an invaluable contribution to healthcare. Globally, women make up 80% of the health workforce, and in the Pacific, 75% of women represent the nursing workforce. In Fiji, women dominate the health sector, particularly in the nursing profession. The majority of frontline health and medical workers are women, and thus the most at risk from COVID-19 transmission and related occupation health risks. As Fiji suffered from a second wave of coronavirus infections starting in April this year, many of our women found themselves at the front line, and many have had to live away from their families, husbands, and children for a long period of time. Pre-existing gender inequalities exacerbate the negative impact of the pandemic on women. While the work on narrowing gender inequalities continue, we need to put in place more practical policies and actions to lessen the impact of pandemics on women. As policymakers and legislators, we need to look at practical ways of reducing the impact of such disasters like pandemics or public health emergencies on women. This requires practical actions like providing safer workplaces for our frontline women healthcare workers, such as ensuring their feminine health needs are adequately taken care of. Flexible terms of employment during pandemics, such as extended leave for women who have been isolated from their families due to their frontline work. Providing the necessary support to women in the informal and small business sectors, such as monetary support, deferment, or discounting of market vendors' fees, etc. For parliaments, gender mainstreaming is a key strategy that can be used for progressing SDG 5, achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. The Fijian Parliament's standing orders require a gender-based analysis to be used by parliamentary committees when scrutinizing legislation or undertaking their oversight functions. Standing Order 110 subclause 2 provides that where a committee conducts an activity, the committee shall ensure that full consideration will be given to the principle of gender equality, so as to ensure all matters are considered with regard to the impact and benefit on both men and women equally. Gender impact analysis become all the more crucial for parliaments during the pandemic or any disaster where women are impacted greatly. In conclusion, Madam Chair, I note with much hope the many examples of initiatives being undertaken by APPF member parliaments and countries as a response to the pandemic, in particular, actions on women. APPF is an excellent forum for the sharing of best practices and examples of how we can address gender inequalities, in particular, during times of much distress and tribulation like the COVID-19 pandemic. Madam Chair, I thank the forum for giving me this opportunity to give a very brief remark on the impact of COVID-19 on women in Fiji and what we can do to elevate to elevate this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We were waiting for the Russian delegates to sort out the interpretation issue with the Russian delegation, but due to previous engagements, the Russian delegate had to leave. So later we will mail you the transcript with the English translation to all member countries, speech, which was scheduled to be delivered to you by Russian delegates. Are there any other delegate wishing to speak? Please click on the raise a hand button if you wish to speak. Anyone wishing to take the floor? Has a Fijian delegate, did you raise your hand? There's no one wishing to speak. Let us wrap up this session. It was my privilege and honor to have this opportunity to exchange our views on gender-sensitive crisis response in the post-COVID-19 era and achieving gender equality by increasing women's participation and representation. I'd like to especially thank those delegations who are participating in the session despite large time differences. I'd like to once again thank you all for your participation, and I wish you all the best of health and happiness. Thank you very much.